Millennials are America's largest, most educated generation in American history. A generation of ambition, education, and progress facing an uncertain reality. Born into an era of economic chaos, they face challenges far beyond what they were told to prepare for. They've had to rethink traditional milestones as they enter adulthood during global uncertainty. Their struggles mirror those of a generation before them, Japan's lost generation. The same story, different country, different time. America's lost generation goes beyond the numbers to capture the unique ways this generation is reshaping their future, in their own words. It's a story of real people, authentic challenges, and untold resilience. Explore the stories and reflections of America's Lost Generation by Cameron Cohen. Available now at soupllc.com.
Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, we are joined by Adam Torres. He's the co-founder of Mission Matters, and it is a very interesting website. I was checking out earlier. They're amplifying all sorts of stories about business and innovation. So if you are on my LinkedIn newsletter list, this episode is definitely for you, where we talk about business and the economy and all this sort of thing. And we've had so many business leaders as the years have gone by. They are a podcast. They are a wonderful website. They're an email newsletter list. They are doing it all for business leaders, even including lifestyle, all this type of thing. I aspire to be a business leader who's wealthy enough to have a lifestyle, but that's another topic for another day. But we want to welcome you, Adam, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Cameron, man, thank you for having me so much. This is gonna be fun. I can already tell.
Well, we do try to keep it fun around here. So, we like to keep it light and airy, especially on something like this, which is a wonderful break from politics, which is what we cover. So I always love when a business leader comes by or a fiction author comes in, because we don't have to talk about, something somewhere where people are dying. It's a nice break. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your show/company/project?
Yeah. So, again, thanks for having me on. And so, Mission Matters and myself. I'm a podcast host. That's what I do full time. I've been doing this now going on 9 years. It's kind of hard to believe. I'm over 6,000 interviews in, and we're busy this year. I'll do between 1,500 and 2,000 interviews. I host 8 different shows, all different niches, all different genres, so to speak. And we're still pitching more shows. So the aim and the goal and the reason why I'm currently coming on shows is I didn't start in this entertainment business. I didn't start with the confidence to understand what it was even to be behind a microphone or in front of a camera. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I didn't even understand the importance of sharing your story or the ability of what sharing your story could do to help others. So my aim and my goal in coming on shows, and actually, even though I've been in this business again 9 years now, this is the first year that I've ever actually gone on other people's shows and started guesting. I just never even really understood that piece of why it was important, but now I do. Like, my aim and my understanding is that I want others to get out there and I want them to share their stories, whether it could be on podcasts, it could be on Instagram, it could be wherever, Facebook. I'm not biased on one platform versus another. It could be on TikTok, but I want other people that are out there on the sideline to get in the game and to start creating content themselves. So that's my message, and that's what I like to talk about.
Excellent. Well, no, I appreciate that. In the suit media side of my life, we have started a podcast network doing something very similar, helping people share their expertise, tell their stories. We have people who come on into the network to do that. A lot about writing, a lot of politics. And we've recently expanded. I started a new show with a couple of buddies of mine focusing on gaming and React videos and kind of fun trending stuff like that. So I definitely understand that. We are 6 shows strong so far, so we'll catch up with you at some point.
That's great though.
Yes,
you guys aren't playing.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's a lot of fun. In all your interviews and the things that you've done, what do you think makes for a really good podcast interview?
Well, the first thing I think is it's always the host, first off. Always the host. If the host is excited, if they're interested in their topic, if they're interested in what they're doing, It doesn't matter who you're interviewing. And I know that's going to sound very not what people are used to hearing, but that's what it is. I've had some of my favorite guests that I've ever had on were individuals that maybe weren't necessarily the most successful, let's say monetarily or other things like that that you normally look at. They weren't celebrities. They weren't, even though I've had all of those things on the show, but those are the ones that, like, if they can really hit a heartstring, like something that's different, something that's unique, something that sticks out, and normally it's going to be their story, like something that happened in their story. If they're coming with authentic material, and if the host can connect to that, that's the best thing ever right there, that connectivity. Because then what happens, and the way I like to think of it, at least my process is, it's like I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee, having a cup of coffee with somebody, and the audience gets to listen in, and it's wonderful. It's like the audience gets to kind of be a fly on the wall.
Yes, yes. I've always been a big fan of the very conversational. There's two formats in podcasting I really love. One is people who put together really wonderfully produced things about an interesting topic you probably haven't thought about, because
Yeah.
I'm that person who enjoys that. But the my other favorite is very
Like
conversational
scripted? I
shows.
want like scripted ones? Is that what you mean? I just want to make sure I
Uh,
understand.
yeah, they usually tend to be, because there's a lot, like they're
Yeah.
putting in
I
clips, they're
like
bringing
those
together
too. Yeah.
yeah, like it is a very produced experience. And I've
Yeah.
done several dozen of those episodes like that.
Mm.
I did one about the American presidency, and I had to go find like a bunch of clips of, presidents saying different things, and that just getting the clips for that show was a whole journey.
Yeah, I
Um
bet.
so, but yeah, it was, all sorts of fun things. I also did one that I always like to repost on Halloween, where I talk about the death penalty and executions.
Mm.
And
Mm.
the clips I chose were so creepy. People were like, "Oh my God, this was so creepy and scary." So every year for Halloween, I always post that episode, because
Oh, that's
it's
great.
perfect for Halloween. Yeah, and it was a reader request, or a listener request as well, which was a lot of
Mm.
fun. So,
That is.
but I do love a good conversational podcast as well, and that's how I do my interviews. They tend to be very conversational.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So you said you've been doing this for 9 years, and you never thought you'd get into this. How did you fall into it?
Yeah, so first off, I was a financial advisor. I mean, I was managing money. I was in finance since I was actually in the 16 years old. I started in the IRA department of Raymond James and Associates, and I enjoyed it. I mean, corporate America, I was never one of those corporate people that were like, "Oh, I had to get out. I had to be an entrepreneur. I had to like." That just wasn't my story. In my last book that I wrote, Driven, I talk about, and I call myself to this day an accidental entrepreneur. Like, I didn't know I was getting into being an entrepreneur, even really what entrepreneurship was. So when I was a financial advisor, I had a firm. I eventually started my own firm, and I started this little marketing company on the side, but it wasn't even really a marketing company, to be honest. It was just I wrote a book, and I wanted to put that IP into a company, right? Like, so I just said, okay, I'll put it in this company. So then I created a company, and then started to grow from there. I did another book project, and I found a co-founder at that time who I was originally trying to get to be a part of my book, which it was think of it as, I don't know if you remember that old Chicken Soup for the Soul kind of series, the anthology kind of model?
Yeah,
Um,
we do something very similar at Soup called 25 Servings of Soup. We've done three
oh,
volumes of Yes, we do something very similar in our
that's
anthology program at Soup Media. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. So that's all it was. There was a program we created, and I didn't even know what an anthology was actually. I just a couple of people that were in the business community came up and asked me like, can I help them publish a book? And I'm like, no, I'm a financial advisor. What are you talking about? I can't help you publish a book. I don't know anything about book publishing. They're like,
Yeah.
well, you published one for yourself. I'm like, but yeah, did you look at it? Like the cover is kind of like weird looking. There's no real good graphic design. I'm like, go to a real publisher. And they wanted to work with me, and I'm like, all right, I'll figure it out. So then I figured it out, and 9 years later, we have published over 400 authors in that series, and we've printed a lot of books. And that's where the early on in that journey is where the podcast side of things came up, and that's where the other co-founder's named Shirag, and he says, "Hey, we need to start a podcast." I'm like, "I don't want to do a podcast." That's the thing for me, Cameron. Everybody says we need to do something. I'm like, I don't want. The first book I wrote, I was like, I'm not writing a book. Like, I didn't really understand the point of even writing a book at that time. By the way, at that time,
Yeah.
I didn't really understand. I was like, broke people write books. Who cares about a $5 product? Because I didn't understand it though. I since now understand the importance of that. But in that point, at that time, I was really finance driven, being in the financial, industry. So it's different for me. So a bunch of me saying I don't want to do it, and eventually saying yes, led to the books being published, then the podcast being published, and as that grew over time, I found myself in my own, personal journey and trying to become a better host. And I saw the good that we were doing, and that good becomes kind of like it's self-fulfilling. Even when in the beginning, when there wasn't a bunch of money or anything like that involved, now we're bigger, so it gets better over time. But 9 years later, 6,000 plus interviews in, that's over time it gets better. But in the beginning, it wasn't easy, and but seeing the work that we're doing and seeing like the difference it was making, that was the part that it was like, okay, we're on to something. And so now we're executing, we're growing, and we're trying to tell everybody else it's time for them to get in the game, because there's so much opportunity in this creator economy, in this creator space, that people just don't have any idea around like how valuable it is for them to get involved.
No, it's been I kind of I definitely didn't. I had a little bit of a similar thing where I kind of started doing it, but I had a different kind of relationship with it. I started in terrestrial radio. So I was kind of
Mm,
already familiar with the game. I viewed podcasting as a different, sort of medium, and something that
yeah.
was very accessible to me because getting, even when I started my career back in 2013, radio was a dying medium at that time.
Yeah.
And these days it's basically on life support.
Yeah.
Um, and so I knew my chances of getting a gig in broadcast media were limited, um
Mhm.
and fairly remote. I was also living in Denver at the time, and I basically knew everybody in radio broadcasting or television
Got it.
broadcasting,
I got
and
it.
I just knew there wasn't a lot of space there in that market. So I was facing moving to LA or New York, and it would probably be, years of doing a million
Yeah.
other things before I even could kind of sort of get there. And so
Mm.
I was kind of like, well, I think maybe that's a little bit of a losing game. I'm gonna strike out on my own, and I'm gonna learn how to,
Mm.
do a podcast or a
And
thing.
so you always wanted to, just to be clear, so then you always were like fascinated and you had that talent and wanted to be in that space. It sounds like pretty early on, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I had gotten into mass media when I was in high school.
Mm.
I actually had kind of design what I was wanting to do is I really wanted to go to New York City and be an interior designer. I watched too much Will and Grace as a kid. That was my problem. Um, but then I there was all the other kind of were leading in a different direction, and I was writing. I had started writing. I'd gotten into business writing and freelancing. I was writing press releases and resumes
Yeah,
was my first kind of two
yeah.
services was all that I did. And then someone asked if they could do the content for their direct mail campaign, and I did that, and it was very successful. And I did that,
Mm.
for a lot of years leading up to the 2008 crisis. Um,
Mm.
and that's kind of how I got into writing in media. And after running two magazines and, kind of
Mm.
living in that world, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do my own platform in 2013. And that would started with the Cameron Journal, which at that time was a single column WordPress blog with a free theme.
Mm.
Um, and I thought I'd get into, podcasting and making, videos because by that time YouTube had become a real thing. YouTube had been, around for some time
Yeah.
by this time. And so I thought that would be a great, entree way to get into it, sort of thing. So yeah, it was kind of how just things ended up happening because I kept working in traditional, kind of more traditional media, and so I thought it would be a good time to break into the new
Mm.
media space.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Total on my end, I was so scared and so green. I mean, on my first show, Cameron, you might not believe it, I didn't even use my real name. Like I was so terrified to be behind a mic. I wouldn't turn on a camera. I did over 1,500 episodes before I turned on a camera. You put a camera on me in the early days, I would forget I couldn't do an intro. I couldn't say what my name was. And the reason I share that story is because I know there's some other people out there listening that maybe they want to do something, but they feel that okay, because Cameron's speaks very well and he's eloquent, he's comfortable, and he's natural behind a mic, that maybe you can do it, but they can't. In my mind, I'm like, no, everybody can do it, and everybody can do it, and it takes time. And sure, if you depend, everybody has different levels they want to be at. Like, I don't think by any means everybody should be full time and like full time content creator, and not everybody should be an entrepreneur. It's fine. It's not for everybody, but everybody in today's day and age does have the ability to participate in the conversation by creating content. And I don't think that this is something that, not to get too political, but you could if you wanted to, Cameron, is that we didn't always have that opportunity or that choice historically. So the people with wealth and power wrote our stories for thousands of years, and you go back far enough, it was whoever had the chisel for the tablet. I don't know, Cameron, who had the ink for the inkwell, who had the
Yeah.
papyrus, who had the printing press, who had the, so entire histories have been written out of existence. Entire cultures have been written out of existence or just not remembered, whether it was intentional or not. For whatever reason, they're not, not remembered. So now, where everybody has this ability to be a creator, but not only a creator, but to have distribution to where you create something that maybe inspires somebody on the other side of the world. Like that's such a beautiful thing. And to be able to, and looking at a layer deeper, like your own legacy and lineage. Like I wish, and it's not their fault, they didn't know and they weren't around at this time, but I would love to hear a podcast episode of my grandma and grandpa. That'd be amazing. They're no longer with us. They lived to be in their mid 90s. They had very full, healthy lives, right? But I don't get to hear a podcast episode with them. So there's layers of this content creation, at least on my side, that I'm like, man, I can't even imagine what this can mean going forward for humanity and for civilization.
No, it's very, I mean, information has been assiduously controlled by governments,
Yeah.
religious organizations, the Catholic Church being pretty notorious here in the West. Um, different, different institutions in Islam as well, and elsewhere in the world, different institutions, sort of thing. Yes, information control has been a very important thing in controlling narratives. The one I always laugh about is in the Bible there is a civilization of people called the Hittites. And for years and years and years, there was no real written records of them other than the biblical sources. And for it was quite a while, anthropologists and other scientists thought that it was sort of a Bible myth. They were, referred to as something else. These people didn't really exist. We only found a physical record of their civilization about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Everything else was gone
Wow.
until they were digging around in the desert in Jordan and finally found what was left of the Hittite civilization. And but they, I mean, but even if it weren't for the biblical sources, we would have had no clue. We would have just found a random city in a desert, not known who it belonged to. And it was, I
Mm,
always kind of laugh at that. It's kind of like how if you'd told them at the time, nothing will remain except a few mentions of you in a
yeah.
religious book, and people won't even believe you were ever here
Yeah,
for
like you were not.
thousands of years until we finally find you
Wow.
again. They would have thought that was rather insane because they're a quite extensive trading empire. But
Wow.
because of political changes and whatnot, all the records of them were lost except for a few mentions in the Bible until about a decade ago when we finally found them in the desert. So,
Man. You're a
yeah,
writer, Cameron, aren't you? I think you
yes,
write too.
yes,
I
yeah.
would love for you to do some type of fictional conversation with a Hittite about that, what you just said. I'm giving you homework. Think about how cool that would be, like though. Wow. That would
Yeah,
be like that's
it's
a what
actually
you just said is deep. Like I'm going through it in my head and I'm processing like what that would be like to have that conversation. That's interesting, man.
it is an odd thing, to because there was people kind of forget there were all these wonderful. The world was smaller and more
Yeah.
balkanized in the years before we had big nation states, big empires, sort of, and
Hmm.
there are kingdoms that, were at the time vitally important, were the center of human civilization of their region and area that
Yeah.
have been lost to the sands of time.
Oh, for sure.
And people kind of, and that's why even whatever was written down either wasn't kept, was destroyed for political purposes. I mean, you can, lose stuff, which
Mm,
is quite tragic, and that's why it's always wonderful.
mm,
I'm one of those people who, because I love stories and storytelling, I think it's really,
yeah.
really wonderful when you can go and dig up wonderful things from a family's past, a birth certificate, an immigration record, a church
Mm,
record, all those is always very interesting and fascinating. Even just family stories, I'm always encouraging people before your elders die, get them to say stuff in a
yeah.
microphone, sort of thing. But I told my mom about a year ago, I said, well, Mom, you're almost 70. Time to start
Hmm.
recording stuff. Time to start writing some
Yeah.
stuff down. Like, so,
Man, Cameron, I'll share a story with you, and this is
yeah,
it's interesting that you say that. So, so October of last year, I don't know if you remember, there were some, maybe not, it's no big deal if you don't, but there were some tornadoes that surprised Florida last year. So the hurricanes were supposed to come, of course, and that was
right.
that was all talked about, but the tornadoes came and they hit this little area out there, and six people passed. One of them was my mom in that tornado. And what's kind of crazy about that is before that, I did an interview with her. I went out there, did an interview with her, and I did three interviews actually in her lifetime that we were. She was just turning 70, so she was 70, so same age, mom wise. And I'll tell you what, we were planning on. I was planning on bringing her under on the show once a month, and that was my goal to get her just to start documenting more of her life. And now looking back, like the one thing that I do value and that I treasure are those interviews with her. So I agree with you. You get your mind because you never know. Like I didn't expect mine to be taken by a freaking tornado. That was crazy. I'm still dealing with that. Like that was just
Absolutely.
out of the blue. So now you think about it, and that's one of the things that drives me now to get on here and start guesting on other shows is because I want other people to participate in this game. Like what we're doing matters, and I'm telling you, like you don't know until someone's gone that you're gonna want to listen to that recording. And now I don't have kids yet. I hope to have kids one day, but one day if I do have kids, if I'm blessed enough to, then they're going to be listening to their grandma on those podcast episodes, and that's what they're going to have are those three episodes. And
Yeah.
that's her accounting of her life and on this earth and on this planet. So that's just a whole nother layer of legacy of what this content creation journey has brought me. Like that I could have never imagined. The way I like to think of it is it's just as you unfold and you're going through life, other things happen to you, or with you, whatever we want to say or word it, but new levels of understanding come up. And so that was one that was given to me that now I share with others so they understand. Like, yeah, man, you gotta get, Cameron's mom, you're watching this, you better get on that show, do some episodes with him. You better get some episodes done, man, because he needs them. That's good.
No, no, I was always the nerd that I always loved. We have some of the best history we have is primary sources of people's letters, written back and forth sort of thing. And the everyday accounting of events is always fascinating, where
Mm,
people, will talk about things that are going on in the world and their loves, their worries, and that is it makes the past so much more human when you
yeah.
can hear it from the pen of people. And um thanks to recording equipment, we have two recordings of people born in the 18th century. One is Otto von Bismarck, who was the president of and who unified Germany in 1871. Thomas Edison went to Germany to demonstrate his new recording equipment, and we have a brief couple phrases of him speaking.
Mm,
And there's a recording of an older noble woman whose name I can't remember right now. And that's all we
mm.
have of people born in the 18th century. But
Wow.
they lived long enough for recording technology to exist for them to actually be heard
Mm,
speaking, which is quite
mm,
quite insane.
mm.
And sometimes I think about, if it's such things that had existed, what certain people of the past would have sounded like, things like that. I find some people find that stuff so boring. I find it endlessly fascinating because
Oh, for
I
sure.
enjoy people's stories. What happened, how people ended up places, why they decided to do certain things, what opportunities they did not have. Always very fascinating.
Absolutely. Have to agree with that.
Yeah, it's really quite good. You have done 10 times the amount of content I have done. Um, what does it feel like after all this time to have produced thousands of hours of these stories?
I'll tell you, it's not something that when I set out on this journey, I would have ever thought would happen. That wasn't the goal. It was just recording an episode. And as the momentum kind of grew, there was a moment in time where we had something like, I don't know, 70 interviews that were like yet to be released.
Mm.
And we just decided, hey, release them all. And as we released them all, my team's like, what? What do you mean release them all? I'm like, yeah, release them all. We can't bring somebody on the show and then tell them, yeah, your episode's going to be released in a year.
Yeah.
like that's kind of not a good experience, right? That's not a good look. So we just released them all, and when we did that, our per episode download went up, which is insane. I don't recommend anybody do this, by the way. I don't know if it was a fluke or whatever, or the algorithm caught our show. Who the heck knows? But our per episode download went up, which that doesn't normally happen on any platform I'm aware of. So what that meant is that more people were listening and sharing, and it was like it hit some type of momentum. So we just kept on going, and now, what it feels like is it feels fun from the standpoint of inventing new mediums and figuring out new ways to tell the story. And I'll give you some examples. So it started obviously, in a home studio. Then it kind of grew, and at this point, I've done interviews, everything from in front of live audiences of hundreds of people, all the way to cover. I do a lot of conferences, so I'll fly out, and conferences pay me to come out and cover their conference, and I'll interview all their VIPs and all of their their sponsors and things like that, and I'll do on-site interviews, produce them, distribute them, and now they have content from the conference. And so that has given me access to some of the most unique experiences and conferences really in the world. Like it's just such a privilege. And now as we continue to reimagine this, now we're looking at what does it look like to start helping and telling and working in the communications for governments and for large organizations such as banks and other things like that. So we have a series coming out that's called Africa Forward, that I should be going to Africa in either August or September, one of the two, and I'm going to start there. And we have interest from 3 to 4 countries at this point, and this is going to give me a whole nother level of understanding just about what's happening in the world. Number one. But number two, a new way to tell stories that I haven't had the opportunity to do in the past, which is, for example, do a complete series on one particular country and or development in the past on site, to travel to the country and do some things like that. I've done it in conferences and things like that, but it's a little bit different than creating a series for a country and or for an industry. And we're working on the same thing for Saudi, and going out there and creating a series related to the Saudi, in support of and related to the Saudi 2030 initiative. And then we're getting some nibbles in Asia as well, in Singapore and a couple other countries in Asia, to do the same and to create some type of series like that as well. So as all of these opportunities come, like what it tells me is it kind of puts things in perspective for me. And Cameron, so you started understanding entertainment and understanding broadcasting, all these things. I didn't understand any of this. So for me, my process when I was in finance, the way that I learned was I read a bunch of books, I studied, let's say 5 to 10,000 pages of books to get all my licenses, whether it's, series 7, 6, 63, all that stuff. So now in entertainment and broadcasting, what I've done is I've read minimum 5 to maybe 6 or 7,000 pages now, and I just went back in time and just studied the history of entertainment and the industry as a whole, to reverse engineer the business models, to see what and to interject what I feel I can bring to that, and that's what kind of fuels the creative direction and everything that we choose to create as a company here. So that's been really the fun part. But then it also puts things in perspective. Like I'm a little baby in this industry, Cameron. Come on, man. These the greats, whether we the greats of the age, you think about your Bob Hopes, your Johnny Carsons, you're like all the greats. I mean, they're 30 years plus in that business. Right? Johnny Carson is on TV for 30 years. Like I'm 9 years in, I'm a baby. I'm still an ant. But the fun part and the fun opportunity here for those that do want to be a part of this as a business and as a full-time type of gig is the distribution. They never had the distribution we had. Sure, they had like a Johnny Carson might have had a there wasn't that many networks, and he might have had a not much competition because there was only so many channels and so many things going on at the hour that he was on, and in his day and age. But he didn't have worldwide distribution. You can't pull up a catalog and listen to any Johnny Carson interview that he ever did. It's either behind a firewall, lost in time. They made the early days they used to record over the same tape to save money, so they're
Mhm.
just re-recorded over. So now you look at the content creators of today, and your worldwide distribution is insane. Of course, there's competition, there's more people, there's more content out there. But for those that are striving to continue to get better and reimagine and push it forward, you don't need everybody. You can carve out a real nice living based on finding a niche and creating content that you feel is authentic, that you believe in, and that motivates you to get up every day and to do another interview or to do another monologue or write another article or whatever your medium is. It doesn't have to be any of those, whatever your medium is. So that's what's exciting to me now is just the possibility of what's next.
No, absolutely. I think that is a big that's I think a big thing about the modern environment. I think we kind of look to the past and the kind of hold that certain people had, over because there was, a limit on that. And
Yeah.
that's of course very rare now. Media has changed so much because there's so much more of it. But you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. The power of a small but dedicated audience is
Mhm.
quite significant.
Especially in music. Think about music nowadays. Like
Yes.
music, you got 1,000 people that are really following you and they're hardcore fans. You can make a living. It's
Yes,
not a lot of people.
absolutely.
It's not a
Yeah,
lot of
no,
people.
not at all. Not at all. There was that whole idea about uh the 1,000 fans sort of thing,
Hmm.
which it isn't I mean, yes, if you have 1,000 people paying you, you're probably doing quite well. The how that they don't tell you is you probably need to talk to about 100,000 people to find your 1,000. It's about a
Hmm.
1% conversion rate, so there is a certain scale you have to achieve to
Man,
get to
I'm nine
that.
years
But
in. If you want it, you want it. If you
Vince,
want it, you want it. But I agree with you. It's not easy to get to that
no,
top.
no,
I
no. I'm
completely
I'm
agree
not
with you.
saying it can't be done, and there are not people doing it because there definitely
Yeah, yeah,
are,
yeah.
absolutely. But you definitely have to talk to a lot to get that kind of core group going. I found as the years have gone on with the Cameron Journal, and we're turning 12 this year, which is
Wow,
crazy.
congratulations. That
Um,
flew, didn't it? It
It
flew.
it did. It's been a little nuts. With that, I find that's probably the one thing I've never really achieved. I've had a lot of people come by, stop by, engage for a while, fall off, all this type of thing. But really getting that core dedicated group is probably the one thing
Mm,
I haven't really gotten right. And I'm right now in the middle of trying to really get
mm,
that core going. Because with what's happening with AI, the
mm.
days of being able to pull people in from social, from Google search, which is the bulk of what I've done as these years have
Yeah.
gone by, which has been wonderful for my advertising business. Those days are going. We're
Yeah.
reaching the end of that. We're
Mm,
moving in a different direction where having a dedicated audience around you who's always opening
hmm.
your stuff is going to be vitally important. And over at Suit Media, we're with our platform building, we're
Mm.
actively helping people build that.
That's
And
awesome.
so,
I'll tell you a
yeah,
little game changer for us. And this is what, and it could be for me as the creator. I'm not saying that other people can't do this otherwise. I'm just providing another perspective for you.
yeah,
When I was only online and only digital, so meaning what like during COVID is when we kind of like we couldn't do, we used to do a lot of in-person events, and then COVID came, and obviously you know what happened then, right? So then no
right.
more events, no more conferences. When I came back online, and I should say, and when we were able to start doing in-person events again, like and even attending conferences, like getting out in the public, handing out, I mean, I hand out anywhere I go. For example, I'll give you an example. I hand out like promo, I hand out little cards. Like you can't find me not handing out a card or something with the podcast on it. I have these little I don't think I have any on me. I might have one on me actually. Oh yeah, I do have one on me. Maybe. Let's see. For those of you that are driving in the car, you can't see what I'm holding up. For those of you that are watching the camera, you obviously can see what I'm handing up. It's a poker chip. I have poker chips with the show on it, Mission Matters, a little QR code on the back, and I've handed out literally thousands of these poker chips and tens of thousands of flyers. And what I found over time is in order to build that consistent audience in person, at least for me, maybe it's just for me, I feel this way, but it's been very helpful to make that one-on-one connection with somebody, to look them in the eye, to shake their hand, and to, you know, even just thank them if they've been listening to the show. I feel like that's something that people don't usually get that experience from a host anymore. Like not, most hosts aren't like accessible to where they get to, you know, you get to meet them or you get to like participate and feel like you're part of the show. I'm not saying you can't do that digitally, you can't do virtual things because we do that too. But I think those in-person ones, that's probably where I got my strongest core audience. It was like meeting people in conferences and handing out swag and things like that, and like and doing the same conference year after year. And then at some points at certain conferences I'll go to, people will come up to me like they're just like they've been listening to the show from year to year, and you could tell because they come up, like some people come give me a hug like I'm their cousin or their brother, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what's going personal space, like.
Ah, yes, that parasocial relationship bites again.
So I just
Yeah.
say it, like it's whatever portion of in person somebody can do, I'm a fan of doing it. And virtual, of course, we do virtual all day long. I do
No, no,
virtual, but I
I
like some in
carry
person.
no, I carry cards with me. I remember during COVID, I had gone to get vaccinated, and we they made you wait for a half hour afterwards in case there was any immediate
Mm,
problems. And so we're all of us just sitting here, and no one, when I went, no one left without a card. Like I
yeah,
have that sort of hustle type of thing. I wish I could do more conferences than I
I love
don't
that. By the
do.
way, I love that
Um,
you were literally in the COVID waiting room, like, "Hey, you
yep.
listen to podcasts?" Like,
Yeah, like bored at home.
you're
Here,
my
have a card.
hero,
Listen,
Cameron. That's
coming. Yes,
awesome.
yes. I've got that kind of always be closing hustle. I'm that guy.
My
So
hero,
it
dude. That's awesome.
Yes, yes. I wish I could do more conferences and events than I don't do. So I think that's a helpful. I think that's a helpful tip for people getting started, looking for people to come alongside them,
Mm,
build that audience. You know, it is not just necessarily a digital game. It can also be an
mm,
in-person game with the right stuff. You know, having and starting those
totally,
conversations.
totally.
I think that's so vitally important. And I have to say, every time I have had an opportunity to go to a conference, I have been wonderfully blessed with, gaining
Yep,
new listeners, and I've sold books, given away books at
yep.
times, sort of thing. So it's been quite good. In 2020, my first book was titled What the Hell is Going On?
Mm,
And there were a lot of people concerned about, obviously COVID, but not only all the things that were changing and how society was changing. And I spent probably about $2,000 giving away copies of the book just
mm,
on Twitter, wherever people, sort of thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, all this, social science. I've actually been writing with this for a long time. And it was probably the most expensive marketing I've ever done because I
mm,
was just sending copies of the book for free and ordering
mm.
them. And, this all adds up pretty fast.
I agree.
I have to say though, from a branding perspective, I've
Hmm.
never spent better money because
Yep.
it got me in front of new people. I mean, the brand growth coming out of that was just tremendous
Hmm.
because all of a sudden I was in the conversation. So obviously not everyone can afford maybe to necessarily do something like that. I
Of
was
course,
very
it's hard.
lucky
It's
that at
hard to
the
give away 2 grand. That's hard.
I was very lucky to be able to just drop books in the mail to people, and it was
Hmm.
one of the greatest branding moves I ever did. It was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and it grew lists and got grew social media followings, and it was tremendous. So
Hmm.
yeah, whatever place you are in the journey, there's definitely not one linear path, and some of us have tried all the different paths. But I love that in-person sort of aspect of, and it's so exciting your work internationally. That'd be a dream come true for me. So you're so lucky to be able to do that.
It's just the way I see it is we're doing the same thing that we've always done, Cameron. We're helping people tell these stories, and we're giving people a platform to do so on. And what I find is it's just like whatever we can invent and make, and then go out there and you got to find a sponsor, obviously. So you got to have some sales chops, but yeah, if you can sell it and if there's a market for it, like you invent it. That's what I say. And like all these things for everybody
Yeah.
listening, I didn't come from this background. These were just ideas that came out of my mind that I saw a vision and I created a deck and I pitched. And it's that simple. Not easy, not easy, simple. You got to do it. You get a lot of no's, get a lot of no's, but
Yes.
if you keep on going forward, like you can do some things too if you choose to, if this is the kind of business you want to be involved in. So.
Yes, well, I think I think I'd say the big takeaway, and then we'll do plugs, is, and I always say this when I used to teach advertising, um, and I've thought about kind of doing either a course on my platform about that or even just a YouTube
Mm,
series. As there's, the most compelling marketing fundamentally tells a story. People do not buy products, they buy stories.
hmm.
And if you are a solopreneur or you're selling yourself, your expertise, or whatever have you, that's really what people are buying. People are buying your
Mm,
story. And I think I think the big takeaway from all of this is, if you are in business and you want to take things to the next level, the first question I ask is how are you telling your story? Either
mm,
personally, your brand story, all what how because that's really what people love to buy into, is a story. And
yep.
I always used to joke, I said, this isn't true anymore, but at the time I said, does anybody know why Tesla, who makes lousy cars that explode, it has a stock valuation at 24 times forward earnings? It's very simple. People are buying the story of electric cars.
Mm,
They're not selling cars, they're selling the future.
mm,
That's what you're really buying, is the future of the electric car. The electric car is the future. That's what you're buying. The cars are terrible. I mean, they're not great. The Cybertruck is the most obscene thing ever put on four wheels. But
that's an ugly car.
it doesn't matter, because what people are buying is the story. It's the
Mm,
story of being in the future, and that the future is here. And what you're really buying when you're buying a terrible car or an ugly truck, you're not buying a vehicle, you're buying a story. And that's why
mm,
Tesla has 24 times forward earnings, despite the fact that their cars are terrible and one of them is incredibly ugly. So and that's true for anything, especially if you're a lifestyle brand. It's all
mm-hmm,
about story, all
mm-hmm,
about story. But even if you're a coach, it's your story that establishes your expertise, that's going to get people to be kind of like, yeah, that's the journey I want to take. That's what I want
yeah.
to, do in my own life, sort of thing. Selling is very, very, very important. And
Mm,
that is, and I apply it to my own life. I've spent a non-zero amount of time telling my own story to encourage people to look at something a different way,
mm,
or to sometimes humanize something that's incredibly esoteric, to say, well, here's how it applies to a real person that you kind of already know. And I'm still looking for new and exciting ways to tell my own story of how I got here, or how the political commentary is, or about the books, or how did I come to write some fiction, or whatever have you. I'm always looking for new ways to explain that to people. So it's story is vital. So you're doing wonderful work for people. I love it. I can't wait to hear about some of these international stories. It'll be very exciting.
mm.
So it'll be good.
Well, thank you, Cameron. Hey, appreciate you having me on today and really just getting to chop it up with you. This has been a lot of fun.
Good. Well, this is the portion of the show where we do plugs. So here's what you should do. Let us know where we can find you, where we can keep up with you, and listen in for the future.
Yeah, real simple. Ask Adam Torres on Instagram. Just if you're out there, you're working on a story, you got a show you want to pitch, you got a book, you got anything else, you just tell me your story. Shoot me a DM. Love to hear what kind of shows you guys are working on, what kind of books you're working on. And again, Ask Adam Torres on Instagram. Real simple. And from there's a link tree that'll give you all kinds of other things to the platform if you're interested in seeing. I believe we give out more free content than any other company of our size on the planet. There's free ebooks, there's all kinds of stuff, newsletters, all kinds of it, you name it. But anyway, Ask Adam Torres on Instagram. Real simple.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you, cameraman. Appreciate you.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you.